Joe Bob Briggs, and we have the third and final in a series of low-budget sci-fi rip-off classics tonight, Replikator, where a scientist and his ex-girlfriend fight off both his evil clone and a guy who wants to create a superhuman race and take over the world. You know what that makes me think of? Makes me think of the big biotech boom going on now. Remember when the National Institute of Health got a big check from the government to study the 100 trillion cells in the human body and find out how they can mess around with fetuses to upgrade the population? Well, there are some things about your genetic DNA that they have found out. For example, one, they have isolated the SAT gene. When enlarged 1 billion times under the electron microscope, the SAT gene shows an exact score, 567 verbal, 685 math. This means that when that baby is born, he's already coded for that exact SAT score. He doesn't even really need to study for it. He can if he wants to. It's not really any point. You've either got a Harvard baby or a Chico State baby, and there is nothing you can do about it. Second thing they found out is the strongest, most weather-resistant genes belong to cement contractors in the Ozark Mountains. Now, if left unchecked, these genes will gradually dominate over all other genes in America, and we will become a race of mashed potato-eating hawkers of concrete. Three, researchers have discovered a wild card gene in independent insurance agents that causes them to put satellite dishes in their front yards. Four, the desire to surf is caused by a chromosomal disorder called dude syndrome, where the normal shapes of the 43rd and 44th chromosomes become juxtaposed in a goofy foot pattern. And five, Bryant Gumbel has no genes. And researchers are looking into the possible reasons for that. Okay, more discoveries during future shows. For now, let's watch Replikator, the only movie of 1995 that features both Ned Beatty and an Italian stripper with a seat in Parliament. I'll do those drive-in totals after the break. Roll it. You know, one of these biotech guys is just going to look up one day and say, we seem to have had a little accident in our lab. And then 100 years from now, we'll all have walrus teeth and hickeys on the end of our noses or something, you know? One of the Judds will be president. Ugh, not something you really want to think about, is it? This is kind of Blade Runner light, isn't it? That guy says, whenever we try to replicate anything complex, the peripheral software causes the replicated sample to amplify imperfections in the original. The problem is how to sustain quantum flux in the replication field while conforming the signal from the sample that we're replicating. But I mean, come on, anybody who's graduated kindergarten knows that the problem is how to sustain quantum flux in the replication field while separating the signal from the sample, not conforming it. Who writes these things, you know? I do kind of like that Justice Channel. Do you watch that? Where the TV audience gets to vote on the guilt of criminals. That's certainly a fair way to decide criminal justice issues, and vigilantes with remotes, you know. And I especially like the virtual stripper played by La Cicciolina, the Italian adult film star and former member of Parliament. I'm going to need a whole break to talk about her. Okay, go ahead. We're going to do those drive-in totals now. We have 23 dead bodies, 2 helicopter crash and burns, 8 breasts, ixnayed right out of there, impaling on a coffee spout, hand biting, crotch slugging, sizzling mouse, virtual stripping, real stripping, ex-boyfriend slapping, virtual burying alive, 58 rounds of gunfire, face disintegration, 2 stars. Roll it. Back. La Cicciolina's role in this flick, by the way, has been seriously whittled down by the TNT censors, which means that her 2 enormous talents are on the floor of some editing room in Atlanta. And I hope nobody trips over them.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's MonsterVision and Replikator after these messages.
Was that the wimpiest knockout punch you ever saw? He caught him with that lethal second knuckle of the 4th finger. That's Michael St. Gerard as Ludo Ludovic. Surprisingly, Replikator is the last thing on his resume. He's got kind of that 50s rock and roll look to him, so I can see why he got cast as Elvis Presley in a miniseries back in 1990. And of course, who doesn't remember him as the acting teacher from season 2 of Beverly Hills 90210, the one Shannon Doherty gets a crush on and who makes out with Gabrielle Carteris. I know I remember that. And, you know, everybody in this flick looks like somebody else, because the ex-girlfriend looks a little bit like Jennifer Love Hewitt. That's actually Brigitte Bacco. We got the female cop that looks like Janet Reno. And then there's a guy who looks like Ned Beatty. And, oh, wait, that is Ned Beatty. Well, How do they get actors like Ned Beatty to do these movies? I mean, the guy's done almost 120 films in the last 18 years. You'd think he could afford to be a little choosy. Anyhow, let's do some commercials and get back to it. You guys know Ned Beatty's very first film was Deliverance? That just amazes me, you know? How many times do you think people on the street yell, "Squeal like a pig, Ned, squeal like a pig"? I mean, what kind of person would do that, really? But actually, I'd do that.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's MonsterVision and Replikator after these messages.
David Hemblin giving a multifaceted and subtle performance as the chief of police. You think maybe he's evil? I'm just not sure. David's got a recurring role on the show Earth Final Conflict. And fans of that show are very familiar with Lisa Howard, who plays Captain Lily Marquette. And here she's Lena, the lovely lab tech. Of course, around here we like to remember David Hemblin most fondly as the doctor in Booty Call. All right, the replicated Ludo has just grabbed himself some pimp clothes, so let's go see how he looks in them after the ads. Do pimps still wear those jackets with the big fur collars? Where do you get those? Are there special catalogs where you can order that stuff? Because I don't really see too many of them at J. Crew. Write to me and tell me. TNT 1010 Techwood Drive, Atlanta, Georgia 30318. Let me know about that. Or email me at joebob@turner.com. Maybe I'll post the info on our website, which, by the way, is tnt.turner.com/joebob. But I'd look good in some purple satin pants, don't you think? You know, they wore some of those in Booty Call. Speaking of Booty Call, and you know, Booty Call, it just came and went, didn't it? There was no Booty Call 2. There was no Booty Call cast reunion. There was no Booty Call video. You know, and they wonder what's wrong with Hollywood today, you know? Who's calling the booties?
We'll be back with Joe Bob's MonsterVision and Replikator after these messages.
I have a question. Is that character named John Cheever? The one in the old pilot headgear who looks like Peter O'Toole? I mean, John Cheever is a very well-known author, so I'm just wondering if they did that on purpose, and if so, why would they do that? I mean, isn't John Cheever that guy who wrote stories about bored insurance adjusters in the suburbs of Connecticut or something? I mean, they hadn't made a lot of John Cheever books into sci-fi action blockbusters, have they? And another thing, the replicator amplifies the bad parts of whatever was replicated. Again, why? I don't know. Ludo's evil clone is making a nuisance of himself, but I didn't see a bad side of Ludo. Did you? So, what's the point of the clone? Just to walk around picking fights in strip joints? Because, of course, that's not a bad purpose to have in life. Okay, back in a few. John Cheever, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, and goofy lab tech from El Cheapo Blade Runner ripoff. It's symbolic. I don't know what it's symbolic of, but I'm sure it's symbolic.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's MonsterVision and Replikator after these messages.
Now we know that Clone Ludo is evil, because who would steal a blind beggar's dog? That was funny. Okay, the clever Replikator researchers decided that in the future, prisons will let visitors walk right up to the cell and just have a chat with the prisoner. In drag, no less. All right, I'm totally confused about this computer program. Did the clone just destroy it, and why wasn't it working? I have no idea. You know what, let's get to the important part of the plot, the part where we get to see the performance of Tina Show, otherwise known as La Chicholina, and her two enormous talents. So go, get those commercials out of the way. And the clone got some more pimp clothes, didn't he? The pimp he mugged obviously had an overnight bag with him, you know, or maybe he's Pimp of the Future. Pimp of the Future has a self-renewing pimp wardrobe.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's MonsterVision and Replikator after these messages.
Lord Falcon is a cryptic of Byron Scott. Why don't I see that? We have a character named Byron Scott now. We have a character named John Cheever and a character named Byron Scott, because this screenwriter is obviously a fan of both East Coast intellectual fiction and the Lakers. Well, Tina Show's show got pretty much cut beyond recognition. We saw a flash of Butoc, and then they did keep in the part where she rubs the horn player's trombone, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. But we missed the show, and even worse, we missed the bathtub scene with the fabulous Ilona Staller, better known as La Chicholina, famous for bathtub scenes and menage a trois scenes and menage a quatre scenes and menage a quintuple scenes. And well, let's just say that in Italy, they've seen a lot of Ilona, even during her campaign for Parliament, where she made sure that voters did get a peek at those two talents. And big surprise, she did get elected as part of the Radical Party. She crusaded for some very important issues, you know, like allowing prisoners conjugal visits, sex education in schools, and the repeal of Article 528 of the Penal Code, the law that prohibits offending the, quote, common decency, under which La Cicciolina has been prosecuted many a time, so she knows that one very well. So, okay, guess what? It's almost over, so stay with me a little longer, okay? Some of Ilona's movies, by the way, were shown in a New York courtroom a few years ago when her husband was suing her for divorce and custody of their kid. Ooh, they were providing visual evidence of her lifestyle, and that was a good day in court in that downtown Manhattan, you know? This lady can do the entire multiplication tables with her thighs, you know what I mean?
We'll be back with Joe Bob's MonsterVision and Replikator after these messages.
Wow. 7 screenwriters on that baby. I guess it just took that many people to perfect it, right? And boy, howdy, am I looking forward to the sequel to that one. Okay, next week we do not have a low-budget ripoff to a well-known movie. We have a low-budget sequel to a well-known movie, Children of the Corn 2. I can't wait for that one. And that's it for me, Joe Bob Briggs, reminding you not to worry. It only seems kinky the first time. You guys hear the one about the old man who's critically ill? He feels death is near, so he calls his lawyer and he tells him, I want to become a lawyer. How much is that express degree you told me about? And the lawyer says, well, it's $50,000. But why? You'll be dead soon. Why do you want to become a lawyer? And the old man says, well, that's my business. Just get me that course. So 4 days later, the old man gets his law degree. And his lawyer goes to his bedside because he wants to make sure his bill will be paid. And the old man is suddenly racked with fits of coughing, and it's clear that he's at the end of his life, and the lawyer's curious, so he leans over and he says, please, before it's too late, tell me why you wanted to get a law degree so badly before you died. And the old man whispers with his last breath, one less lawyer. Joe Bob Briggs reminding you that the drive-in will never die. Didn't like that one? Try this one. You're in an elevator with Hitler, Stalin, and a lawyer. You have a gun, but you only have 2 bullets. No one will ever know what you do. What should you do? Shoot the lawyer twice just to make sure. You guys know what the letters D and A stand for? National Dyslexics Association.